am Mina Malik and this is the Coffee Table. And me in my power sleeves welcome you to another wonderful show. I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about animal rescue and animal shelters here in Pakistan and trying to highlight some of the wonderful work that two stalwart young ladies have been doing for animal welfare here in Pakistan. And this is a sort of conversation that it's both complex and simple at the same time. And I'm really excited to be sort of delving into both of those things today on the show. We are so excited to be welcoming Ayesha Chundrigar all the way from Karachi over the internet. Ayesha is the founder of the ACF Animal Rescue, which is the first and largest rescue service and shelter in Pakistan. It was set up in 2013 and has been doing such important and fantastic work in Karachi for animal welfare. We are also really, really excited to be welcoming Hina Muzaffar Shah here in Lahore. She is an animal rescuer and activist. She's been running her own private shelter for the past 7 years. And she is also the brains and beauty behind Faltoo Sey Paltoo, which is an initiative aimed to educate and sensitize the public to animal rights. Welcome to the show, ladies. Excitement all around. So Ayesha, tell me a little bit about your journey to setting up ACF. And I know that it began in 2013, but I don't think that anybody who works with animal rights just sort of magically woke up to it. I think that most people who are involved in this have loved animals since they were little, and then at some point decided that something concrete needed to be done to protect them. So tell me a little bit about the ACF journey.
Okay, well, first, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I was just telling you I might be a little low right now because I have two frozen shoulders and I have been working in the sun for like the last 2 days and I'm a little exhausted. So I apologize if I come across a little exhausted and dead right now. However, yes, so I was 24 when ACF started and I had just moved back from England. So I was a journalist over there. And again, I was doing humanitarian documentaries essentially. And then I came back and I also became a therapist for humans while I was training and doing that and doing journalism. And I had like 4 other jobs because I had to make money. And then I set this up. But, I've always loved animals. I've always had animals. I've always rescued animals, like as much as you could as a kid. But there was no really, no concept over here. So I think for me it was, honestly, it was less about animals and it was more about like ACF's vision, which is in our articles of association and legally whatever I put out there to register and make this organization was more about helping all of those neglected and ignored segments of society that no one looks at. I think that has a lot to do with the personal journey, obviously, because, you only feel that kind of empathy when maybe you've gone through something similar. And I think I've always been one for the underdog, be it human or animal. So it was never, for me, it was not about this is just animals. Like if you look at our vision for ACF, it was about any segment that is. And so as a therapist, I worked with acid burn survivors. I set up the first therapy center for them. I work with orphans. I work with kids who've been through drug addiction and sexual abuse. So for me, it was all segments. And it just happened to... Animals happen to gain the most momentum. And I started with animals because I was like, no one's doing anything for them. And everyone, told me I was crazy and that this is obviously not going to work. And, like one thing that really bothered me as a kid, for example, when I would ask a teacher or an adult, this donkey, like he's obviously looking really sad and there's something not okay and he's dragging all this heavy weight. And the answer I would get is, well, they're used to it. I used to be like, no one is used to suffering. No one likes it. No one is used to it. So that's a very easy cop-out, which I don't believe in cop-outs. I don't believe in complaining, whining, cop-out. I think so for me, it was about if you're seeing suffering, any kind of suffering, I don't believe suffering should exist to a certain degree if we can actually make sure that it doesn't. Because if we continue to make it exist, we are part of the problem rather than the solution. And this whole idea that, oh, well, they're used to it. No one is used to suffering. No one is used to constantly being beaten or being abused. And if they get used to it, that's not a good thing. That means we have done something wrong in society, that we've made suffering a norm. So for me, it was more a very philosophical reason. that got me here. And yes, I moved back from England because I was severely depressed, because I had a great job over there, getting a wonderful job as a reporter for a big channel, and I was getting a few modeling gigs and a whole bunch of things. I was like on my game over there.
Yeah.
And then I sort of hit this fork in the road where I was like, look, have a choice. Either I go do the glamorous stuff, which, you know, still humanitarian issues or whatever, or I go back and I do something insane and, you know, give it a shot. And I like challenges. I mean, I'm one of those people who I want to see how far I can take something, and I want to see how I can do it, and if I can do it, like pushing myself and putting obstacles that I need to overcome. So I think that helped in growth and character. And and then when I started, it was just like a Maidan. So I'd registered it because I don't believe in doing anything without it being legal.
Yeah.
And I don't take money, or I wouldn't do any of that without legally having everything in place. So we are very, mashallah, a good registered, audited, very, like a solid organization. Yeah. So I did all of that. I didn't even know about that stuff.
Even from like the website and things, you can see how organized all your functions are, and there's, you know where to donate, you know what to do, all these questions have been answered. And I think that really kind of methodical and really sort of step-by-step approach, it really shows in how professional, it is, the work that you guys are doing. Like, it's done in such a professional way. And I think that probably has made all the difference as well, because it is a serious enterprise and it's a serious work that's being done. And I want to kind of cycle back to what you said about suffering, because I think that is so important. But just before we do that, hi, Hina. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you, Mina.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Amazing. So, Hina, now I want you to tell me a little bit about your journey. And I'm very curious about Faltoo Sey Paltoo, because from what I understand, the idea was actually part of your art and design master's thesis. And that in itself is just really cool, actually, because you took your love for animals and the sort of rescue work that you've been doing over the past several years, and then you've sort of melded that with your academic interests, and you've come up with this wonderful project that is furthering the cause. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Okay, Mina, so mine is pretty different from Ayesha. I started off when I was hardly 18 or 17 years old. Yeah. So it started, I would bring animals home. From one cat to another, I would put animals in my backpack and I would sneak them inside and put them in the bathroom and stuff. And over the years, as I got my separate space, I would bring them in. And even if someone would come up, I would say, so no, it's just one cat, two cat. But that started off, and over the years,
behind the door, there would be like 10.
Yes, exactly. Even to this point, my parents do not know what exact number do I have. I try not to show them these interviews and articles because, do I mention them? Okay. However, over the years, I've been rescuing on a very personal level, like whatever I can do in whatever capacity I can. I bring the animal in, rehabilitate, try to put them in a home. But it's been very recent that when I started my master's program, I realized that, over the years, it's the same cycle that kept on repeating itself. You always get a call that an animal has been abused, an animal is about to be culled, that is abandoned in whatsoever way. Yeah. So that was the thing that was bothering me, that as one person, even if we have like 100 organizations here, we will not be able to address the issue unless we start working on the grassroots. So Faltoo Sey Paltoo is basically an initiative to work on that. So, all these cases that are being reported, all these cullings that are happening, abuse and all sorts of abuses that are happening. Yeah. It is happening in the city. It is happening on field. So my purpose of bringing up this project was to go back there and have a conversation with those people. No one is doing that maybe some people might be doing it purposely, but then again, the idea is about negligence. There's a lot of apathy there. And apathy, I think, is also a learned behavior like empathy, and you can reverse that. So the entire idea about Faltoo Sey Paltoo is to go back into the city, speak to those people, engage them in creative manner, bring them tools, and put them on board with them. Talk to them as equals. We're not there to give them a lecture or something like that. We work with them. We work with the children especially. That's the whole point. Because that's the only hope that we have. With adults, you have a lot of levels that you cannot reason on. They bring on religious perspective and social and stuff. But with children, they're very raw. And I believe that if we have children taking care of this, and most of the cases of abuse that happens are at the hands of children. That's so terrifying.
That
I
is
remember,
actually, that's very scary. I think that that's a really important point as well, because when we're dealing with adults, there are a lot of different issues that come into play, trying to have a conversation about being humane to the animals that they own. But children don't necessarily have those same concerns. Like, they don't have to sort of worry about, looking after the donkey that pulls the cart that their father runs their business from, for example. But at the same time, it's really important to realize that a lot of animal abuse that's happening with strays, for example, a lot of times children are the ones perpetrating that abuse. And that's actually really scary. And that's something that we will talk about later on in the show. But I want to come back to the idea of, well, not the idea, the reality. And maybe, Ayesha, you can weigh in on this with me first, because I know that ACF does a lot of donkey rescue and donkey welfare work. And the fact is that because Pakistan is, an agrarian economy and it's an agriculture-based economy, so then obviously horses and donkeys and goats form the mainstay of a lot of agricultural practices, and we need them. And I think that's probably where this idea of animals as property comes from. And I know that ACF has been, trying to work with people who do own these animals and use them for business and whatever work that they do, to kind of, it's a delicate conversation to have, I imagine, because you can't take someone's property from them, but at the same time, it's also kind of counterintuitive that if the only animal you have to pull your cart is an animal that you're treating horribly, then that animal is not going to make it, and then who's going to pull your cart? It's a sort of long-term approach as well.
And picking up from what Hina said and sort of, connecting it what you're talking about right now, for me, the reason I say it's the very philosophical sort of an ideology that I'm following, because as a therapist, this animal rescue has taught me, because we've rescued now over 9,000 animals easily. Yes. And in the last 8 years, so we've seen all sorts of abuse. We've seen all sorts of people. We've met all sorts of people. I've spoken to thousands just myself. And this is not counting our outreach programs where, which I'll get to in a moment. But what's really interesting is that as a therapist, you get to see the best of people and the worst of people. And you really try to, you understand a lot of human behavior and why it's the case, because the issue of animal abuse is far greater than animals. It's actually a reflection. It's like holding up a mirror to our society and our culture and seeing what it is that we are doing. Yep. So, so, that's the part where I was like, whoa, this is why I focus just on animals. Yeah. I didn't do the extra stuff that I wanted to do. Yeah. I sort of melded it all together. And for me, it was more the way we educate. So we've always been about empathy and compassion. That's my standard, that I'm not going to do anything unless the education comes in at the same time. So I'm really glad Hina started this in Lahore, because it's so interesting to go out there. So we go out, we vaccinate, we neuter dogs, we talk to people in the area. So we have to have one-on-one interactions to understand why this is happening, how they think. And if we don't exercise the same empathy towards them, even if they are not our kind of people, or that, they're horrible to animals, if you don't give them that respect, then they're never going to get it. So and the donkey medical camps that we have, so we were also doing them in Islamabad as well, but because legally now we have to register in Islamabad, and also we had to stop them temporarily, but we were working in the brick kilns where there's bonded slave labor till now, and their only source of making money is the donkey, and we're working with donkeys in Karachi. So we always tell the donkey owner, you have to bring your son or your daughter, whoever's going to take over your karobar with you to our camps, because as Hina was saying, so what I realized a while back was that the donkey owner might not get it, but his son is going to get it.
Really?
So if we just
why do you think that is?
This is what I mean. This all stems back to children are much more flexible and malleable to make them, and you have to show it yourself. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday when I was at Empress Market over here, which is your Tollington Market in so it's the same as that, right? So I don't believe in going and screaming and yelling and doing all of that. It doesn't work. It makes us feel good that we are these saviors and we have this God complex that we're so great. person is going to actually double the abuse they're doing, be it on the donkey, on the dog, on the animals.
Because they
if
get
you
defensive
treat
as
them
well.
like garbage. Of course.
Yeah.
And that's no way of getting ahead with anyone. Even if someone did that to me, I'd be like, who the hell are you? I probably want to do more. So you got to sort of change that around, which is why I think being a therapist helps, because I've trained my team in therapy when it comes to engaging with people, talking to people. So yesterday, for example, I sat on the floor on at one of the shops in Empress Market where the cats hadn't been, like, there were these beautiful Persian cats who hadn't been fed in like 3 days.
I saw that. And they were just
no food or water.
They were just lying there.
And so these Empress Market people thought I was some, fancy person who's come in and I'm just going to raid their place and I'll come with police. I'm going to do that. No, what I did was I sat on the ground. I said, open up the cats. Let me sit with them. I'm going to feed them. And when the owner of the shop saw that, he was like, I didn't think a woman like you would ever sit on the ground. Like, I've never seen this happen. He was like, just take all of them. Just
really? He just gave them to you?
Like, okay. Yeah, because he was like, I've never seen anyone care like that. I've never seen this. I don't know what this is. And you see, the reason I say we're holding up a mirror to our society is because we are so devoid of what empathy is. I mean, the first rule is the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yes,
and they're two very different things.
Yeah. And I want to interrupt you here. We have to take a break, but this is something that I want to really dive into after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table. We're having such a wonderful, brilliant conversation with Ayesha Chundrigar, who is the founder of ACF Animal Rescue, and Hina Muzaffar Shah, who is the founder of Faltoo Sey Paltoo and also runs a shelter in Lahore. And before the break, we were talking about empathy and sympathy and how talking about animal rights is so important, because most animal abuse is happening at the hands of people who are also deeply traumatized in different ways. And when we talk about empathy and being humane to another living creature, we're also actually really looking at ourselves and how we interact with other living things. And a lot of animal abuse comes from being desensitized to your own feelings yourself and not being able to communicate those feelings in a healthy way. And Ayesha, I think that this is where your training as a therapist is also so useful to this conversation, because clearly, if a child is cutting off a stray's ears, this is something much deeper and much more serious than just sort of, it's not children playing to do something like that.
You see, it's actually really interesting. It's funny you say me as a therapist, because even for me, I was just thinking, I did journalism, which actually helps in the writing, and because social media is my business model. Social media is how the awareness started. I had like 20 followers when I started, and now we have like a good following, right? And it was because I kept writing from the point of view of the animal, and I kept talking and trying to give a different perspective, making videos, doing that. So that master's came in handy, and then my therapy degree came in handy.
Yeah, nothing is wasted.
If you're not, nothing is wasted. And then my first degree was literature and philosophy. So, and that's where the philosophical part comes in. Oh, no way, I love that. So it's really interesting how I, sort of combined it all together. And it honestly, it happened itself. I didn't plan any of this. It sort of just fell into, like, it just kept happening. Yeah. But, so let me just explain one thing about empathy and sympathy.
Yes.
Right? Sympathy is when you can feel bad for someone from a distance and feel like, oh, that's really sad.
Yeah.
And it finishes that. Empathy is when you can put one of your feet in the other person's shoes and one in your own shoe and walk together. Because you're still yourself, but you can feel what it's like to be in the skin of another person. So you feel their feelings very deeply. Now, the biggest thing is it's very hard to feel empathy for others if you don't actually feel it for yourself, or you've never been taught it either. So
Yeah.
now we're saying it's also learned, right? It's done through behavior. So if the general behavior we see towards a street dog is shoo, or stamping your foot, or, you know, just throwing
Yeah.
rocks, if that's all that children are going to see, obviously they're going to model that same behavior as they
Yes.
grow up. So and the thing is, we have become very immune to suffering over here because there is so much of it, and that's why it's the animal abuse has become so bad because people see it more now as a sport, because it's not about the trauma. Like, I think they've gone beyond.
Really?
Now it's more about just being, I think it's more about being sadistic because you can be. It's more of a power game. It's when you feel powerless, you take it out on the most powerless. So you are projecting your own feelings of powerlessness onto the most weak. So that is what's actually going on right now, which is why, I mean, for example, the FBI, you know, like all these big organizations abroad, they look at people who abuse animals as the ones who grow up or who escalate to child sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, wife beaters. Now tell me, we have so much intolerance in our society for so many things. There's such a massive divide between women and men, all of this. And what I at least realized as a therapist doing all of this work, studying and talking to thousands of people by now, is that this is all coming from a very deep level of not respecting those who are weaker than you.
Quite right.
And the easiest way to exercise and to learn that is to learn not to love animals. I'm not asking anyone to love animals. I'm asking them just to respect animals. So for me, this is what I was saying. So, you know, like, I'm not expecting people to start adopting strays, or I'm not expecting people, because it's a very new concept that sort of started taking, it started like 8 years ago when ACF started, kind of a thing, right? People are talking now about all of this. And so 8 years is nothing in a revolution, kind of a thing. It's nothing. It's a very small drop in the ocean. It takes a very long time. You got to take baby steps. And so the fact that we're on this show and we can talk about it, the fact that, you know, there are people who are supporting us, the fact that we still exist, these are the small victories, like the fact that the government is with me to go to Empress Market, or the fact that,
that's huge.
All of these, it's massive, and it wasn't my idea. It was the assistant commissioner's idea.
Wow,
so
but
this
she
is what
sort
I'm
of
saying.
came to you with it, and that's wonderful.
Yes.
And the more that we kind
I
of talk, and I think that, sorry to interrupt, also I feel like, and Hina also mentioned this, that ACF also gets a lot of calls from people who want to kind of report that, you know, there's a cat that's had kittens on my street, or that there's, you know, an animal that's been hit by a car. And it's not like people aren't aware, but it's also like, I think previously where there was just no option, like who could you call? Maybe 10 years ago, who could you call if you saw a cat being, you know, a cat hit by a car on the side of the road, or somebody beating their donkey, or there's like a lame horse somewhere. But now there are options. And Hina, I think that you also wanted to weigh in on the empathy and sympathy conversation.
So, you know, what Ayesha said so on point. You know, it's so fun to see how someone you've never spoken to is coming on the same lines as you have thought and not even spoken about. So when I started
community.
You know, when we started off with Faltoo Sey Paltoo, I went to this Alif Laila Book Society. So basically they work with different communities in Lahore. And you know, when I went there, I asked this one question. I asked, what's the difference between a dog and a potato? Okay? And they
a dog
said
and a potato. What?
Yes, and they said there is none.
There's no difference between a dog, which is a living creature with feelings and responses to everything, and a potato?
Yes. They said no. And then I said, okay, can a dog cry? They were like, no. Yeah, can a dog be happy? They said no. And these are the children mostly who have this encounter with stray dogs when, you know, they're on roads going on school. So either they're bitten by the dog or the dog is hurt through them. And
somebody's just like whooshing them away all the time, which is like what Ayesha said. And you stamp your foot and you make them run away. Even if the dog is just like sitting on, on the side of the road minding its own business, we're still very nervous all the time.
You know, the idea of dog is very monstrous for them. When I took in a dog of my own, and I actually introduced them to children. So the parents there actually were telling them, no, get away. Look, he has nails. He has these claws and stuff. And I said, he also has nails. So he has it for his own purpose. It's not there to, hurt you and all. So that's from where we started off. And, the idea that you have to teach them to feel for the animal as well. Here I brought in creative tools such as, drama and theater and play. And, we would tell stories again and again. Then they would enact those stories. And that's how when the workshop ended, I remember we were getting out of the bus and there was a dog sitting, and one of the children said that he might bite, and all the rest 20 said, no, he will not if you do not say anything. So that's eventually they start learning this if you keep on revising it. We do not even have this narrative in our curriculum or daily lives and all, where there's the idea of a dog. It's more like an insult, or even for any animal. It's like we do not see them, let alone as equals. We don't even see them as a part of the society we're in. We see them, okay, they're just an extra. That we see them like pest, like, or any animal for that matter.
I think
that has a lot to do. That has a lot to do with the argument that you first said, that we being an agrarian society. So I went to jail to actually, interview a few. Yeah, so for my paper, I went to the jail, Lahore jail. I wanted to interview people who had been inside for murdering people. And I asked that, have you had any interaction with animals? And they said, yes, we had cows and goats and stuff. And that was the only interaction they had. And then they would say, okay, whenever I would ask them, what do you think that there's a difference between animal and a human? And they said that animals are dumb. And maybe, those farm animals
and this idea that animals don't feel, and like when, in the film where Ayesha also talked about the donkeys, and we're often told that, well, they don't feel pain, and that they're used to pulling heavy loads, or that, well, they're just sort of these dumb creatures that are just there. Like, this idea, like a dog and a potato is the same thing. Like, they're not. And animals are also, the animals can get depressed, animals are scared, animals can get anxious, animals get nervous, animals can be happy, animals love. And these are all things that humans do too. And like all living creatures, on some level, they're all sort of, we share all of these things. And but I can also see, like, again, I'm not coming from a place of judgment either, but I can understand that. Do you feel like this is also part of coming from an agricultural sort of culture where, because it's like, the beast of burden is so crucial to your work that you can't even, you can't see them as sentient or feeling creatures, because if you started doing that, then you wouldn't be able to work properly. Ayesha, I think you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, I did. I was going to tell you this is my theory, but I think it's a fairly legitimate one. But the reason why the people that Hina was talking about, that they can't see the difference between a potato and an animal, is because I'm gonna get a little psychological over here, but it's because if you look at humans, right, we can identify with human suffering. Even if we don't empathize with it, we can identify with it.
Like we
what does identify mean? Yeah, and the way we understand human suffering is that, that could happen to us because they look like us. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to connect with human suffering because there's always that fear at the back of your mind, this could happen to me or someone I love. So, and because they look like you, so it's easy to identify. And this is human nature, right? It's survival of the fittest. So if you look at survival of the fittest, you're going to save those that look like you. What Hina and I are actually doing is going against the grain of survival of the fittest, which is why it's such an uphill battle. But so the difference over there is you can't identify with a dog. Because with you will never be locked in a cage. So why identify with an animal that is locked in a cage? But you could be raped. So you'll identify with a woman or a child, but you'll never be hit by stones. You'll never be locked in a cage. So why should I feel for that? So again, this is what I mean by a very deep level of lack of empathy at all, because also for humans, we're not empathic towards humans. The average person identifies with humans because of the fear that it could happen to us. There's a very big difference over there. I'm not saying it in a bad way. It's normal. Even for me, it can somewhat, it's the same, right? I've also had to really challenge my own beliefs and way of being and to see, okay, what is actually going on? What are my projections that I'm putting out there? What are not? So with animals, I know I'll never be locked in a cage.
Yes.
The way a cat is at this market or a bear is at the zoo, right? I know I'm never going to be made to jump through hoops of fire the way, a lion is at a circus. So why should I identify with that when I can identify with my own, which is the root of the typical question, why are you helping people and not animals? The reason that comes
I was going to come to that.
This is the reason why. That question is asked so often. So once I understood the answer to the question, which is this, what I just told you, I was like, this is really interesting, which is why the education element that now that comes in, like we get acid burn survivors to come to our sanctuary. This is before Corona. But, now we're still having a few people come by. We have these drug addicted kids who are now in recovery, who've been through intense abuse. They come by.
And
all
those statistics, and there are so many these about how people, for example, an acid burn survivor or children who have survived trauma, animals help them recover. Animals help their recovery. People who own pets scientifically have lower blood pressure and less depression and less anxiety than people who don't have pets. So clearly there is a very deep connection between humans being empathetic and being kind and being able to look after the most sort of helpless creature around them, which are animals. And animals, they can't, there's no material gain to be had from looking after a dog or a cat or a donkey, except just sort of doing something which is good.
Identify. Oh, sorry. I think we're talking over each other.
No, it's okay.
My bad.
No, it's fine. I'm sort of ruminating.
People, so when these kids come, for example, right, and they've been through their own trauma, and they see a dog who is on a wheelchair, who's really happy, and because my sanctuary, I don't believe in a misery. Like I don't, even abroad, a lot of shelters, I don't call mine a shelter, I call it a sanctuary, because I don't believe in cages. Cages are for sick animals. Even then I have quarantine rooms. So I made it a point to make enough money to do whatever I could to do it right or not do it at all. So that's how I think. It's either excellent or it's nothing. Otherwise, I wouldn't put my name on it. So we are actually that level. Like, I'm very proud of my team. It's not me, it's my team. They are next level phenomenal, that they can bring animals back from the brink of death. And it's incredible, my team. Like, they're just amazing.
It really is.
And the sanctuary has this very healing feeling about it, because all the animals are open. It's a very beautiful place. So you have this dog on a wheelchair, or a three-legged dog, or a blind cat, or whatever, but they're all so happy. So, when these kids come or people come and they see that, wow, you see this dog who has 3 legs or no legs, but he runs as fast as a 4-legged dog, because he doesn't see that he's lesser than. With humans, we have so many complicated emotions, insecurities, fears. We're either living in the past or the future. We're never living in the present. Animals live in the present. So a 3-legged dog is not going to care and not even register that he has 3 legs, because animals don't register the way humans do. But he will run faster than a 4-legged dog. So when these kids see that, they're just like, whoa, he doesn't think there's anything wrong with him, but he has 3 legs. So I'm like, so if you look at yourself, why do you feel not good enough when the 3-legged dog doesn't feel good enough? Like, the 3-legged dog feels like he's as good. So these kids are like, that actually makes a lot of sense.
I hate to interrupt this wonderful conversation, but needs must. We're going to take a very quick break and we'll be back in a flash. Stay with us. Welcome back to the coffee table and the scintillating, fabulous conversation that we're having with Ayesha Chundrigar from the ACF Animal Sanctuary and Hina Muzaffar Shah from Faltoo Sey Paltoo. And we've been talking all things animals and all things empathy and kindness and how we can make our cities better, and also doing a lot of myth busting along the way. And it's just been Wonderful. Hina, in the videos that I saw that you were making for Faltoo Sey Paltoo, there is a video of you interacting with kids from a Kachi Abadi in the middle of a lot of trash. And they've got these stray dogs that are their pets, and they all have names, and all the kids are giving them cuddles, and they all know whose personality is like what. And it really seems like, they're all friends, and all of these kiddos have this personal relationship with these stray dogs. And it's just so wonderful to see.
Yes, Mina. So, when I actually went out there and started interacting, apparently, Mira, first, the idea that I had, I thought these children, these are the ones who are going to beat them and stuff. But it completely changed. When I actually went there, those dogs were in fact protective of those children. So we went there. When the children started interacting with us, that's only when the dogs came in as well. That's when they started trusting us. And, it's just like, I feel as if for children, it's way easier to understand the other animal because they do not have all these pre-learned behaviors that we have now.
Yeah.
That, okay, this is an animal, this has to be at a distance or and with those children, they did not have this typical hygiene issue that we bring in every time. So they were
because those are all those sort of things that we, and I'm also thinking about these kids because we've been talking about how empathy is a learned behavior and how children are not naturally unempathetic, but if they're looking at behaviors around them and those are the things they're learning. So the sort of, it can go here or it could go there, it's a sort of, it could go in either direction, but as long as we sort of keep trying to kind of push them towards the empathetic side, then there is hope for, us to be able to be kinder to our environment as well around us. And Hina, I know that you wrote a really great article about how the ecosystem of a city, of an urban space, does include animals. And we do have stray dogs in cities, we have stray cats, we have, maybe other cities have different kinds of things. Like I know that Islamabad used to have a lot of wild boars at some point. But all cities have animals in them. So, and this is where my mind is now turning to culling and this whole idea that we need to cull strays to control rabies. But it's not even true. It's not true that all strays will give you rabies, for example.
Okay, let me just go
but first to the city.
So, yes. Okay, so it's the city. I think I should start pehle se, where I wanted to. So with the animals, with the children, those animals, the difference is that those children have grown up with those animals, those dogs, they're not looking them as, we have them as pets. Similarly, if you move to our village side and all, there you see a lot of dog population there. However, they're protecting those farms, they're protecting that livestock. So here also those animals are not kept as pets, but they're just living around and they're playing their role. What has happened in the city, the way we have grown as urban spaces, we have actually invaded their area and we're trying to push them out. And that's technically that's impossible, because the ecosystem doesn't work that way. We have a lot of organic waste, and we need those dogs for us. Otherwise, you'll die of plague or something like that.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't consider, is that there is an actual function that a lot of stray animals perform living in a city. They're not just aimlessly wandering around trying to jump on you or run after your car. They're also doing things like, eating up excess food waste, for example. I think that's really interesting.
They should be there. They should be there for that. And also, if you try to eliminate them through these unnatural ways of culling and all, as Ayesha has also mentioned in quite a few articles, that this is actually law of nature, the survival thing, that they start reproducing more. So if you kill about 10 dogs, there'll be 50 more in the same area soon. And if you remove those dogs that are actually living in that area, there'll be other dogs encroaching the same area soon. So it's a cycle that will go on until you address it in a systematic way, and that option is only spay and neuter. Right. So, you have to see that how these animals could be put to greater use for themselves and for ourselves as well. Because we actually do need them.
So, Ayesha, tell me a little bit more about the TNR approach to controlling stray populations. So, that's trap, neuter, and return.
Okay, so more like T and VR, because it's trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release. Right? So Hina sort of mentioned that right now as to, about the population will grow more if you keep culling them, because again, it's a survival of the fittest instinct that animals have as well, that when any species knows that they're under threat, they are going to mate more to make sure their species does not die out. That's just a given of nature that none of us can really do anything about. And so we've started like an entire big program, which we were small, and I kept building it up as it kept going on in the last maybe 2-3 years of trying to make this something. And it's really wonderful because people call us, and like as you were saying, we get as far as rescues go, we get about 300 messages a day for any sort of thing, for help with their pet or to rescue this animal. Yeah, our social media is insane, and that doesn't even count our hotline number. But then we also get we get so many calls from across, not just Karachi, but Hyderabad, Lahore, Islamabad. Please come here. Dogs are being poisoned. Dogs are being killed. Can you just come? And so a lot of people say, just take the dogs away. So I was like, look, you can take the dogs away, but you'll have 10 more who are going to come over here. So let's vaccinate. Yeah, so if we vaccinate, neuter them, right, and put collars on them, you just leave out leftovers. No one is saying to feed them, because then the whole thing comes in, I prefer to feed people. I'm like, feed people. I'm not asking you to, but people are not going to eat bones. People are not going to eat stale pieces of roti or bread. So you can actually give that to put that in a mitti ka pyala, keep it outside, keep some cold water outside. They're actually great guard dogs. And you just keep them like that. And if you keep hitting them and you keep doing horrible things to them, then how do you, if someone did that to me, if I was asleep and someone kept throwing rocks at me or shooing me away or stamping their foot, I would go destroy that person in a second. How can you expect a dog not to retaliate?
Exactly,
Plus,
because
the dog
it's
doesn't,
the same cause and effect.
It's the same thing. And then the biggest thing is that what people don't get, what I found really interesting in talking to people is that people think dogs know and have planned out who they are going to bite. Like they're actually projecting their own way of being onto a dog that maybe he was hit by some other guy, but he's bitten this child over here. So then he should have just bitten that guy. So you see, that is such a complicated concept to make people understand that animals they can't think, they feel everything we feel, but they're not able to think or understand, okay, this one is the bad guy and this one is the good guy, so only buy that one and not this one. When you're living on the street as an animal, you are literally surviving, and you are surviving and you're thinking every human is bad. So you are
because that's all you've experienced. So if we are just generally kinder to strays, then strays won't have a reason to mistrust us. And actually, that just kind of makes logical sense as well. So Ayesha, I am curious though, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to biting, and that's the sort of main reason why people support culling, and there's this idea that all strays will have rabies, and that all dogs that bite you, all stray dogs that bite you will give you rabies. So that's not true, is it?
I mean, honestly, I've been around maybe 10,000 dogs so far, stray dogs, in 8 years. Do you know, I've never met a dog with rabies, ever. Right. Rabies, when you ask the average person, do you know what rabies is? They'll be like, no. So what is rabies? People don't know the difference between a dog bite and a rabies and a rabbit bite. Rabies is something where the dogs, okay, so rabies is often in bats, and bats are more in rural areas. So dogs in rural areas, or any animal in a rural area, can get bitten by a bat who are rabies carriers, and then they will get rabies, and then that animal will foam at the mouth. They can't go out in the sun, they can't see the day, so they'll hide in dark places, they'll bite anything and everything inside, their eyes are red, because it's a brain disorder, right? You basically go mad, and you die within 10 days of getting the disease. So if there's a dog who's sleeping, chilling in the sun, right, on any footpath or whatever, and you're saying he has rabies, it's like, are you kidding me?
He's
the dog is chilling out. No,
so this is very important. This is really important
because
you can recognize.
We actually connected rabies to stray dogs many moons ago, and we've stuck to it, not realizing it's actually a myth and it's not reality. you'll maybe find the odd, which I still to date have not met a rabbit dog.
Right.
So there's number one, a very big difference between a rabies, a rabbit dog, and a regular street dog. And that is, I think, the first difference that people need to understand.
Yeah.
And second one is that a dog doesn't realize who they are biting. They are just trying to survive.
It's an instinct. It's an animal instinct.
It's an instinct. Yeah, absolutely. And the moment you become slightly nicer, and again, I'm not saying love them. No one has to be an animal lover. I'm not pushing that on anyone to be that. I hate doing that. Hence I don't ask people to adopt. If they want to, if they see my work, if they see what I do, and then they want to come forward, which many have, then I'll be like, okay. But I don't believe in preaching and throwing new ideas and just then getting mad at people for not accepting.
And some people just aren't that into animals, but I think that what you and Hina are basically talking about is it's just empathy, and even maybe just being neutral to animals. You don't have to harm them. You don't have to put them in your lap either, but you can be neutral about animals as well. And that's a sort of, it sounds so silly and simple also, to just not harm. Don't sort of actively go out and harm an animal. So Hina, do you have any other tips for us in terms of, even if you're nervous about an animal, and like Ayesha said about how you can put some water in a bowl outside, or you can leave scraps outside that a stray dog could come and eat. Is there anything else that we can do, or sort of conversations to have with the younger people in our life, or even people, when you're sort of on the road and you see somebody like mistreating their donkey, for example. So are there some ways that we can kind of approach this conversation in a way that is healthy or productive and without ruffling their feathers, but also trying to kind of communicate that this is not okay?
I mentioned this earlier as well, that not just go out screaming at those people that no, you cannot do this, you're doing, because when you will come in a defensive position for them, so will they. So what I have learned through all my experience, I used to be the one, I remember when I was younger, I would literally start fighting on the road. But then I realized that it's not productive at all. So you have to, I think it's going to vary from people to people. If you see a child doing so, you'll have to talk to them into a manner. If someone does that to you, how would you feel? Okay. So if you see a donkey owner sort of doing this, and what mostly I do, I reach to them from the Islamic perspective, and I say, look, it is not kind. Your religion doesn't preach us so. And if someone who is very,
so that's a good way to kind of approach that.
Yes, you have to shift. You have to shift your narrative, I think, as per the area. When we would even work in the Jhogiwala areas and stuff, for the children, we would tell them that how these dogs, they're loving you and stuff. For the people, we would tell them they're protecting you, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ayesha, and thank you so much, Hina, for being with me. And I think this is a conversation that I could just keep having for hours and hours. But unfortunately, we have to save something for next time. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you have learned as much from these two wonderful women and in this wonderful conversation as I have. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, please look up the ACF Sanctuary and Faltoo Sey Paltoo on Instagram. I'm not sure if they have a Facebook page because I haven't checked, but they're definitely on Instagram. They are always open for donations, for volunteers, for any kind of help that you can give. Share their work, spread the word. And again, everything counts. Nothing is wasted. And working towards a kinder and more empathetic city and heart for all of us, what could be better than that? Thank you guys for watching again. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye.